now, just wait for a second.
Yeah, there's 10 seconds. How long is the delay, do you think? 30 seconds, yeah. So just, okay, here we go.
What for?
Can you just say something at a time?
Just testing.
Hi John, can you hear me?
Yeah, that's working. So now, leave it streaming and hit the confidence mode.
morning everyone, and thank you for attending this special council meeting today. I declare the special meeting of 26 June 2024 open at 9:01 a.m. I advise members of the public that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded in accordance with council standing orders. Councillors and staff are reminded of their responsibilities under their respective codes of conduct, both inside the council meeting and when dealing externally on behalf of council. On behalf of Whitsunday Regional Council, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet here today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. We recognise their deep enduring connection to country and we extend our respect and gratitude for their wisdom and culture. Welcome councillors, WRC staff, members of the public and media. Also, I'd like to acknowledge that Councillor Clay Bowman and the CEO are joining us today via Teams online. Okay, so first item for the special meeting is apologies. I note there are no apologies for this meeting. Second item is the Mayor's budget speech. I'll move that, and second, Councillor Wright. Welcome everyone to the 2024-25 Whitsunday Regional Council budget meeting. This is my first budget as Mayor of the Whitsunday region and has been a challenging one to deliver. Not only with a short period to come to grips with the council business, but also with the lens of the significant cost of living pressures that are occurring in our regional communities. We know our residents everywhere are feeling the pinch. Council's priority for this budget has been to maintain essential services, address legacy issues in our waste business, and adequately plan for the future while keeping rates as low as possible. In doing so today, we're presenting a 0% yield increase in general residential owner-occupied rates across the region. This measure is intended to dampen the impact of the huge variation in new state government valuations handed down this year on our residents. What we'll see in practice is that some ratepayers will be paying less, some will pay more. As the value of land is the basis on which general rates are calculated, Council has had to make significant changes to all elements of the general rating system, including the introduction of capping, to ensure fair and equitable distribution of general rates across the 19,300 properties within the Whitsunday region. As such, Council is appealing to the state government for more clarity and certainty around the timings of these valuations to protect our ratepayers from significant spikes like what we're experiencing in this budget. Changes to the Land Valuations Act are needed to reduce the maximum number of years between valuations to 3 years. With the federal and more recent state budgets being handed down, it has become apparent that cost shifting by high tiers of government is seriously impacting the future sustainability of regional councils and our ability to deliver services and growth that our communities deserve. Since 2002, the financial impact of services shifted onto local councils over the 12-month period has risen from 47 million to 360 million. This cost shifting is directly impacting our ability to deliver vital council services like roads, parks, gardens, swimming pools and libraries. In meeting with the State Opposition Leader David Crisafulli last week, I raised this as an issue of significance for councils, and I'll be advocating to the Premier and major parties to support local communities like ours by undertaking a parliamentary inquiry into local government cost shifting, an unfair burden impacting our ratepayers. Rising inflation has had a huge impact on the cost of running council, and I'm very aware that it has a huge impact in the lives of our residents and business owners. With the increased cost shifting being passed on to local government, councillors have been pushed to tighten our belts so as not to impact our ratepayers during this cost of living crisis. Our amazing region has seen significant growth and development in the post-COVID era, but with this progress comes challenges that council must tackle head-on to ensure that our residents can thrive. This has understandably raised community concerns about the affordability and sustainability of living in our region, particularly in the area creating new affordable housing. From what I've seen so far, we are doing this, but we need to do more. As your new Mayor, it is my responsibility to address these concerns and advocate and implement measures to mitigate the financial burden on our community. To be honest, and to be frank, This budget has been a very difficult process, with many compromises made and entrusted to deliver a balanced budget that continues to deliver services and enhance the livability of our region without compromising our future financial sustainability. In preparing the 2024-25 budget, councillors undertook a series of workshops to review and revise the complex components of the budget. There have been many robust budget deliberations amongst us all to ensure your rates deliver value for money for the community. Against the backdrop of rising costs, the hardest item to balance this financial year has been keeping rate increases low while also spending enough to maintain and improve livability for our residents. As we move into the new financial year, ratepayers can be assured that the councillors are resolute in the desire to drive increased efficiency, enhance value for money, and dig deeper to ensure the organisation is diligent and accountable towards the public funds that we collect. As our region continues to move forward, Council will continue to deliver and upgrade infrastructure with a $97 million capital works program, one of our largest ever, to support the local economy. Every capital project approved has been prioritised through a practical and proactive asset management planning, which will ensure our infrastructure remains sound. Asset management remains a key focus for Council. By looking after our assets, we are looking after our community and ensuring that Council can continue to deliver the services for future generations and for future benefits. Functionally, our $106 million operating budget ensures we maintain our services and exercise sound financial management through an operating surplus of just $240,000. In many ways, we are no different to our residents who have been forced to review their budgets for their households or business due to rising costs, both nationally and globally. Council will strive to take additional measures to reduce costs where we can, so we can spend where we must, to maintain service levels in our community. Council's operational focus is to satisfy the growing expectations of our community while providing a positive long-term outcome for the region. In the Whitsunday region, rates and levies account for over 65% of our total operating revenue, and I'm proud to say that Council will continue to provide one of the most generous pensioner rates concessions in Queensland. Also worth highlighting, we are one of few councils in Queensland that provide free aquatic facilities for our residents and visitors, something to be proud of. Waste management has been an area of challenge for our business that has grown over a number of years. We have increasing landfill and legacy compliance costs and a changing regulatory environment focused towards waste and emissions minimisation. Council has increased waste charges by 6% to cover the cost of operations and ensuring we're able to manage our waste sustainably now and into the future. This has been applied equitably, with reductions in the domestic and recycling garbage bin service charges, whilst all properties will now pay a waste management facility fee to support legacy facility and landfill management. Water and sewage utilities will also increase 8% and 3% respectively in order to maintain Council's financial position, while delivering the capital works and network planning required to ensure that Council can continue to deliver the services provided to the community for the generations to come and as our region grows. As Mayor, I am committed to ensuring that Council's financial decisions reflect the needs and priorities of our Whitsunday community. And it is apparent that we must not only seek to reduce costs, but work smarter, look for efficiencies and grow our total rate base and number of rateable properties. New housing is critical to this, not only in sharing the growing cost of new infrastructure, but also supporting affordability and access within our community. We will collaborate with and call on our state and federal governments, as well as private developers, to increase the availability and quantity of affordable housing in our region. Having met extensively with stakeholders around new housing since my election, the opportunities for this are on our doorstep, but we must step forward to realise them. I will do my best to lead the way on this issue. As we look forward, we have allocated funds for strategic projects that will drive service, growth, innovation, and create new opportunities for business and residents. With a renewed focus on growing thriving industries and communities, we have increased funding to support economic development, events, and tourism, and will launch our Regional Priority Projects Advocacy Plan that is poised to support state, federal, and commercial interests investment in our region to combat the shadow of a slowing economy. Supporting and preferencing locally based businesses, money budgeted for our capital works will be spent within region, creating a strong economic stimulus. While cost of living relief is a priority, we have not compromised on our commitment to long-term planning and investment in our region's future. Collectively, we can balance our priorities to navigate these challenges and build a brighter future for the Whitsundays. I thank you all for attending today's budget meeting and acknowledge the terrific work of our dedicated council staff, particularly those in their finance team. I look forward to working with my fellow councillors, CEO Warren Brunker and our executive leadership team in delivering the 2024-25 Whitsunday Regional Council budget for our community. Thank you. Can I put that to the vote? Those in favour? It's carried. Okay, the next item is item 2.2, the budget summary. Move Councillor Clifford, second Councillor Wright. Which officer? No.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. Welcome to the budget meeting. Councillors, I'll just give a quick summary of the detail that's in the budget, building on some of what the Mayor presented in his speech. So this year we're presenting a $264 million budget, so $167 million worth of operating budget and a $97 million capital budget. We're endeavouring to strike a balance between maintaining Council's financial position whilst not placing too heavy a burden on ratepayers through substantial rate increases. A range of external factors continue to influence Council and its operations, and we're taking these into account in the development of this year's budget. We've had a number of challenges in formulating the budget, as the Mayor has said, and we're certainly looking to leverage our commercial businesses and significant business activities to help generate the additional income to offset significant impacts in general rates. There are increases in the utility charges, and as the Mayor has said, there are those that will pay more, those that will pay about the same, and those that will pay less as we work through the budget process. What does that look like? In terms of our general rates, 36% of our ratepayers will have either no change or a reduction in their rates and charges. 29% will have an increase between 0 and 5%, and 35% of ratepayers will have an increase greater than 5 but capped at 20%. Overall, we're seeking to maintain that balance of the impact across our ratepayer base. Our $167 million budget does finish the year with a break-even position and a marginal operating surplus of $242,000. The significant contributions of revenue to Council come from rates and charges, representing about 65% of the overall revenue, supported by a further 18% in our general goods and services fees and charges across the organisation, including our commercial income, giving Council a fairly sustainable position in terms of its operating revenues and position. We'll continue to look to make efficiencies through the organisation. There have been some savings targets set around our materials and services and labour spends, and we'll continue to monitor those costs as we manage the budget throughout the financial year. The largest increase this year in Council's expenses has come through depreciation. That has been driven by revaluation in our assets, particularly around our transport assets, being roads, bridges, footpaths, which has seen a significant increase in value that flows through to an increase in our annual depreciation of just under $5 million. Those costs have been absorbed into the current operations of Council, and we've sought to make efficiencies in how the organisation operates, and will continue to do that to deliver value for money for the community. As the Mayor stated, a capital program of $97.3 million across a range of asset classes for this current financial year. Significant portion of that, some $28 million almost, coming in natural disaster restoration works around Council's road network, and focusing on our waste operations, continuing to fund and deliver about $4.5 million worth of remediation works at our landfills. There are no plans for additional loan funding in the current financial year or in the 2 forward years, and Council is looking to reduce its debt by just under $6 million and should end the financial year with a balance of debt just over $63 million, noting that we continue to have an operating and asset base approaching around the $1.3 billion. The highlights are included in the report, Mr. Mayor. That's the summary. I'm happy to present that summary report and take any questions.
Thank you, Director. Questions or comments, councillors? Councillor Clifford?
Thank you to you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to thank the finance team for all their hard work. It has been an extremely difficult process, one I'm not totally happy with, but you know, we had an election and then the late revaluations have caused huge issues for everybody, so thank you.
So the motion that council adopt the budget summary report for 2024-25 financial year, I put to the vote. Those in favour? The motion is carried unanimously. Item 2.3, operational plan 2024-25. Move councillor Clifford, second councillor Finlay. Mr. Bradshaw, would you like to speak to this all?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, you have before you the 24-25 operational plan. It builds on the priorities and the foundations set through the 2021 to 26 corporate plan previously adopted by council. This, as we're heading into the end of that corporate plan, and there are plans in the current budget to redo the strategy for the forward years towards the end of this calendar year, the operational plan this year represents a number of the key components that will continue to deliver the aspirations of the corporate plan, but are focused away from business as usual and how we might make the organisation operate more effectively, operate more efficiently, and address some of the emerging needs in terms of the long-term planning for the networks and our infrastructure in the long term. There will be quarterly reports to this operational plan to council at the end of each of those quarters, showing the progress of the activities that have been planned this financial year. Some have a financial impact, some look to help assist with efficiencies through the organisation. The document is tabled there for council's consideration and adoption. Happy to take any questions that might arise, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions or comments, councillors? Okay. The motion that council adopt the 2024-25 operational plan as included, I put to the vote. Those in favour? The motion is carried unanimously. Item 2.4, revenue statement 2024-25. With councillor Collins, second councillor Wright. Director Bradshaw, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The revenue statement is one of the important documents tabled for council today. It sets the principles and aligns to the revenue policy previously adopted by council in May 2024. There is one change to the document in terms of the table that's included in there, which shows the limitation on rates capping, and where we have applied a 0%, that will be amended to represent not applicable. So the 20% cap applies to those categories where it is recognised in the table, but the 0% should be turned to not applicable, as that would better represent the information that doesn't imply that there'll be a zero rate increase, but that it's just not applicable to those categories at this point in time. The foundation of this document has been put together by staff across the finance department. I might ask our Manager Strategic Finance, Julie Muller, if she'd like to make a comment on the contents of the revenue statement. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you. The revenue statement, the purpose of the revenue statement allows council the rights then to raise your general rates and your utility charges. So, and incorporates rates and charges to be levied in the financial year and cost recovery. So we've also got to keep in mind we've got cost recovery business units that we need to be ensuring that we're getting full cost recovery back for the organisation and not impacting every ratepayer. The revenue statement also enables council to levy, then after it's adopted, the ability to levy the ratepayers. Okay. In adopting this, we can generate the revenue that was required to run our operational business for the year. Any questions?
Councillor Finlay?
Through the Mayor and through to the CEO, containing the revenue statement is also the proposed annual charge for water. When that item comes up in our agenda today, I'm proposing a different increase from what's been proposed. So through the CEO, I guess, obviously I agree on most of the principles in here, except for the beggars in the water area. I guess what I'm saying is, do I vote for this? Or if I vote for this and vote against the actual water charges resolution, where do I stand with that?
To speak to that question.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So,
Yeah. James, go. Sorry, guys.
through you, Mr Mayor. So, Councillor Finlay, the revenue statement sets the foundations in terms of how the budget is developed. So, voting for the revenue statement votes for what's contained in that document. It headlines what will be presented and adopted for fees and charges later in the agenda. So, if you want to propose something different at that time, it's forecast the rates and charges will be set as what's in the revenue statement. You would need to then either vote against the revenue statement and propose something different at that further point in the meeting, if you so choose, or continue to vote against the revenue statement and what's proposed in future reports within the budget agenda. That choice belongs to you.
So just for clarification then, my proposal on the water charges is only a 4% increase, then if the other councillors agree with what I'm saying, then in this revenue statement, those charges there would have to be changed before we then go over to the actual specific resolution on water. Is that what we're saying?
Through you, Mr Mayor. The budget agenda is written in the sequence that we need to adopt the reports to allow the budget to be valid in a legal perspective. The first foundation of that comes from the revenue statement. Adopting the revenue statement here shows the fees and charges and proposed increases that council will agree to. If you choose not to vote for that resolution and seek to raise other amendments further through the agenda, then each of those will have to be addressed at the time. And if a requirement for an amendment to this statement comes about, then that would need to be included in any proposed resolution that comes forward. Because from this point forward, if council adopt the revenue statement as it is, it sets the first foundation for this budget. That's as clear as I can make it.
Thank you, Director. Any questions or comments? Councillor Finlay?
So I guess on that basis, I need to vote against this, because this reflects an 8% increase in our water charges, and I'm proposing that the water charges, the access charges and the consumption charges only go up by 4%. I'll read what I'm going to read out, and good man, am I able to do that, please? So, as proposed, and what we said, there's an 8% increase in the water access charges and the water consumption charges as well. I'm proposing a 4% increase in the water access and the water consumption charges. Overall, on my model, the estimated increase for a residential occupied ratepayer, and I know it's very hard to have an average, but we bring the percentage down to around about 4.3% roughly, from where it's going to be proposed when you combine everything else together as a 6% increase. I know we've got a 0% yield from our general rates, which has allowed us to increase the rates, the charges for the waste services, and I agree with the path that we're taking with the waste. The sewage is fine. I don't agree with the path with this budget that we're doing for the water. Unfortunately, I don't have the model to calculate the exact amount of what revenue a 4% reduction in the proposed rate would actually generate. However, based on page 282 of the budget documents, where we've got a income statement showing the an increase of the gross rates and utility charges of $1,345,000 from last year's actuals. If you halve that, it's $672,000. I spoke to the director since, and he's clarified that that's not exactly the right figure, but It's the same principle. So, that's fine. So now we have an answer. We need to have a solution to how we're now going to balance the budget. To balance the budget, there's a couple of ways we can do this. We can apply the offset of 240,000 of it from utilising the balance of the estimated surplus. We've heard already from the speeches this morning that there's 240,000 in our budget to be a surplus this year, but also from the reports later on here and from our ordinary meeting today, there's a proposed estimated surplus in the 22-23 year of $1.66 million. Okay, so it's also been noted here that the officers of the council and the CEO, they've advised us that there's a $10 million deficit in the general fund, and this has to be funded by the transfer of funds from our business activity units, our water, our sewage, our waste, all our commercial operations, and all those businesses are return back to the general fund. Okay, so and by reducing whatever the exact impact of this figure is, will have not had any effect on the reduction of our capital works budget or our operation budget this year at all. What we're simply going to be doing is using some of the retained surplus from last year to balance the budget for this year. And there's a couple of ways that we can do that. If councillors want clarification on that, happy to explain my solution to it. If we do not use some of the retained surplus now, then my question is, when are we going to use it? We've got $1.6 million there left over from last year. If we're not going to use that for this year, when are we going to use it, Mr. Mayor? So my thinking now, because of the limited time that we've had as councillors to consider all this budget documentation and everything like that, and still receiving some of the information, and I give a huge credit to the finance staff to pull this documentation together. But it has been a very short length of time that we've had to consider, and I don't think we need to be rushing in increasing our water and sewage water rates by 8%. This year is an appropriate year for the councils to have bring in this 4% increase, not the 8%, because in the scheme of things, as we just heard, and when you look at the financial position, how much money is in the budget, how much money is in the reserves, how much money is in the retained surpluses, there's just heaps of money in there for us. And the difference in this is going to be not detrimental to any of our financial position and the financial operations of council. One little bit. So what we have to do, Mr. Mayor and councillors, we've got to take into account the raising concerns of the cost of living, and we know that. We know that. Water, unfortunately, everyone has to use water. Everybody has to. From the mum and dads that are struggling, washing their, the children in the bathtub, to people that have got gardens. They're going to have to pay another 8% more on top of what they're paying now to wash their children in the bathtub and water the grass and everything like that. Even a drink. You may say water in that glass goes up by 8%. I just think that is too high for our community to handle at this point in time. And we, as councillors, can easily bring in a 4% increase and make it easy for everybody. I just want to note out that I'm the treasurer of the Bowen Community Centre up in Bowen. Been there for 28 years. I see the people that are struggling coming through that doors, looking for help with food and services like that. They are struggling to put, food on the table for the family, and that's one of the services that we provide, not just up in Bowen but everywhere else. So, also, I know climatic condition doesn't come into play, but different areas of our region have completely different climatic conditions, and that affects the water usage. So, councillors, I'm proposing a 4% increase on the basis of cost of living. It's not going to affect anything in our budget today. We're utilising some of the retained surplus from last year, or whichever year you want to use it. There's a way that we can still have a balanced budget. Not sure what the Director Jason want to talk about that, but I'm happy to also put forward a case where we can still have a balanced budget on this.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you like to talk to that, Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, Mr. Mayor, it's always really hard at budget time because officers aren't supposed to enter the debate. We're supposed to provide facts. I'll do my best to not debate the point, but actually just provide some feedback on my understanding of the status of your water fund. I'll try and keep it high level. So your water fund is currently about $5 million in deficit as a prescribed business undertaking in relation to full cost recovery. So what that means is that your water business is already being subsidised by other parts of council business, whether that be the wastewater or the general fund, but your shortfall is already in the order of about $5 million. So you're not achieving full cost recovery, which we are required to do by legislation in relation to a prescribed business undertaking. The second thing is that in relation to the capital program, if you have a look at the notes in the capital program, there are lots of augmentations which are not funded, and we've pushed them out for a number of years. And this is the increase in pipes, particularly for water supply, that are required, particularly in the growth corridors and other locations, where historical decisions about relaxing fees and charges or state government policy on not being able to achieve the full cost of development impact has meant that at some point council and its community may have to meet the cost of those augmentations. We've been pushing them out for years. Okay, so there's lots of work which is not going to happen in the next couple of years that may be forced to happen because of a development taking place which is currently in the capital program and unfunded, will have to come out of council's revenue sources somehow. The third piece of the puzzle is that you have an existing internal loan of about $22 million roughly for your water fund, and that's historically a decision when we've had to do major waterworks, we've actually borrowed money from ourselves. At the moment, there's no plan to pay that back, so it's not an external loan, so it doesn't have an impact on depreciation, which we've talked about, but there's still a debt to the general fund, which the water fund should pay back to achieve full cost pricing. I guess that's my main points. Your price path, I think from about 2 years ago, there was a price path presentation given to council. If you're going to achieve full cost pricing for your water business, every time you delay an increase to deal with that $5 million and to deal with the overall costs of your water business, you're actually deferring that decision for another day. And at some point in the future, that percentage is going to get quite significant in relation to achieving parity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Roth.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. Director Gary, I think you may have sort of answered the question, but just to hear from Jason, I know we have had a price path for the last couple of years, and we are sort of sticking to that. I guess what is being proposed, the alternate, is that sustainable into the future?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councillor, I will reflect on some of the comments made by the Director of Infrastructure as well. The approach to undertake full cost pricing is really an opportunity for us to make sure that we are understanding the full cost of the provision of water services to the whole of the region. And our ability to do that and continue to do that sustainably into the future also forms a key basis of the overall organisation's financial sustainability, as water is one of our significant business activities that we continue to improve in terms of the way we undertake the service, but also that we make sure that we can do that sustainably into the future. The revenue statement that's in front of Council today commits to the price path that we talked to Council previously about, of proposing an 8% increase in this year's water charge. It also proposes an 8% increase in next year's water charges. That's to help fund the difference that we currently have in achieving the full cost pricing results in relation to our water service activities. There will always going to be areas of cross-subsidisation across council, but where we have the opportunity to influence and make sure the right parts of the business are paying the right costs, and the fees and prices that set from that reflect the cost of providing that service, the better the community will be into the future in terms of its sustainability. So it's not a decision that's been proposed to council without any further and detailed consideration, and it's in the revenue statement for council to consider today before it gets to setting the rates and charges.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Jason. Do we have any idea what other councils who have already brought down their budget, what their increases are, just in general, maybe? Because I think some of them have been way more significant.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Clifford, it's really hard to make apples and apples comparisons across different local governments, but we don't think that what's being proposed is outside the current spectrum of what councils are considering. And what we need to understand in terms of Whitsunday as a local government is the scale of the operations that we have here, the geography of the network that we're looking to maintain, and the different needs of the townships that we have in each of the areas. So we're not necessarily just running one water system here, we're running multiple water systems across a broader region. So when we're looking at comparisons with more developed areas or bigger regional centres or those in southeast Queensland, it's really hard to make the apples and apples comparison. But from a professional judgment perspective, the 8% is not beyond the realms of what would be considered, you know, a margin for the current environment based on the infrastructure needs that the community has at this point in time.
Look, I think, you know, going through this process has been challenging, but I think it's important to note that we have gone through a fairly robust process in our own time to actually get to this point. I take the concerns that, you know, people in our community are struggling, and I think that's important. I think the challenge I see here is we've reached a point that really I think we can't do things on the run. I think to implement some level of change now, you know, I would think we would have to go back and model that in a diligent way to really ensure that what we're taking forward as a budget is something that's reflective of our position. So I think making a change like that, I wouldn't see any other option other than to defer the rest of the budget in its entirety. So.
Councillor Finlay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments, and I appreciate Gary's comments there. I point out to you on page 282 of the agenda document today, where we've got the performance measure budget versus actuals for the water fund. As Director said, maybe we are short $5 million. However, we are putting 3.8, nearly 3.9 million out of the current water fund budget back into the general fund. That's what it says here on page 282. We are also funding all the depreciation for the water fund that year as well. We're also putting, as I said, we're putting return back to the general fund of nearly 3.9 million out of the water fund. And that's 3.9 million going back into the coffers of the general fund. And yeah, I think we all realise that we've got some issues with the general fund, and we can only go so hard with this budget. We can't put everything up, and we've gone ahead with the waste charges, put them up as pretty high there, but we can't do everything in this budget, councillors. We can't take all the levels up in this budget. We can phase it in over the next few years. There's 15,000 assessments in water fund, I think it is, through the report here. Every one of those is going to get hit with an 8% increase in their water. Now, to me, that is totally unacceptable. 4% is absolutely, I can get away with that. And again, it has no impact on this year's budget. Through retained surpluses and through the appropriation statement, we can do this. And so I just cannot accept an 8% increase to our residents in our community, into our commercial businesses as well. Not all things are rosy on the commercial side of things, I can tell you that, Mr. Mayor. Not all things are rosy on that side either. So, you know, we've got to do our bit as a council to restrain our expenses. Happy to have a price path going forward, but now's the time, this budget now, you know, obviously we can put the rates up this one, first budget of the council, and, you know, for the next 3 years, well, everyone will forget about it. But that's not the way we should be. We should be thinking of our residents right now, and this is a great way that we can just bring it down to 4%. I'm happy that if we do adopt this 4%, that later on in the financials, when we go over to adopt the operating statement or the comprehensive income and the balance sheet, I'm happy to give the delegation to the CEO to adjust and reflect those financial reports as a result of the decrease in the income of this 4%. And happy to do that. And I've got full trust in the officers that they would do that and put that in there. I don't see any problem with that at all. And I'm happy to move that when I get to that stage, if this gets up today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, the other thing too, probably another motion maybe after this, but regarding the internal loan, in the budget process, guys, unless my memory's lapsing, we weren't advised of anything about an internal loan. I'd like to get a report on the internal loan, what it's for, when it happened, and obviously we're not paying it back, but I'd like to know the full extent of that internal loan.
Director, would you like to, I guess, talk to the so, Councillor Bowman, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to speak to this. I've looked at it. For me, that extra 4% works out to be about 50 cents a week. Every penny counts to everybody at the moment. But I also looked back, and in 2014, Council resolved to introduce full cost pricing and roll it out over the next 5 years. I can only expect through Cyclone Debbie, COVID, every year there's been a similar argument to say people just can't afford it this year. Here we are 10 years later and we're still years away from getting to full cost pricing. I know we all work very hard to keep the pressure on council to keep the general rates to a minimum, but that was to allow us to work towards full cost pricing. And if we put it off this year, it is going to continue to mount and mount. I know it's difficult, and I've looked, I know the Act requires us to put it in a net percentage charge, and from what I've read, our net percentage increase over last year has come to 7.4% across all rates and charges. It is a difficult decision, but I think to get us onto full cost pricing where we know the water comes out of the tap, that the toilet flushes, and that our rubbish is being maintained is one of those difficult decisions that we've got to make.
Director, would you like to, I guess, just talk to what the officer's recommendation, if there is a alternative around one of these policies?
So at the moment, Mr. Mayor, we are debating the revenue statement. The revenue statement forms the basis of the budget. It represents what's been discussed with council in a range of workshops and is what the budget has been built on. A lot of what has been said by Councillor Bowman reflects the history, that there hasn't been the continued pressure to increase utility charges to meet full cost pricing. There are mixed views around full cost pricing, but we need to commit to that to meet with the requirements of the legislation. We are subject to audit on the work that we do in this space, and there are reports in the agenda that will also be reviewed by not only audit officials but also Treasury and the Competition Authority around the pricing and the operation of our activities. So the report is as it is, Mr. Mayor. Any change, rearrange or adjustment to that will require significant rework of the budget.
Any further comments, councillors?
So just for you, Mr. Mayor, we haven't had a mover for that.
That's the motion on the table at the moment.
All right, so that's the motion that's on the table.
Yep.
And I was just speaking against it.
I guess you will. Any further comments? Okay. So the motion that council adopt the revenue statement for 2024-25 prepared in accordance with section 172 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. I'll put to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried 6-1. Okay, on to item 2.5, differential rating categories. Move Councillor Clifford, second Councillor Finlay. Director, would you like to speak to this one?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, one of the foundations of the budget is the differential rates, or the general rates that are charged for properties based on valuation in the region. This report sets those differential rating categories based not only on the land valuations that have been received, but also around how the land is used. So land use and valuation are the two principles around which this differential rating structure has been crafted, and it represents the best value that we can see in the current environment for us to construct a general rating mechanism that will be both equitable and consistent. We acknowledge that there have been some changes this year, so changes in land uses that have added some additional categories there, which are expected on some land uses, and they've been added on the basis that they come up through the year. We've also made sure through the modelling processes that we've re-examined the valuation bands, particularly across the residential and rural categories, and those residential bands reflect the consistent or inconsistent movement in the valuations for this year. The rating categories are proposed as in the resolution there. Happy to take any questions for that.
Questions, councillors, comments? Councillor Bowman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification on short-term accommodation categorisation, rating categories come down to the land use. Is that defined by development approval, or is that defined by the use at the time? And in reflection, if something's a commercial property that's not currently leased, therefore not being used as a shop, does it get a different rating category as for short-term accommodation? If that's got the land use approval but not currently being used as short-term accommodation, which category does that fall into? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bowman. We have chosen this year to call out and utilise Category 19, termed commercial accommodation, to reflect the short-term accommodation requirements. The land uses and codes identified in that category are provided on the basis that the property will generate an income. So we will use the identification mechanisms that we can to identify that beyond the land use code. It is considered in the first instance, and as council matures its approach to short-term accommodation, that we would take on board the current permits that have been issued in relation to short-term accommodation, and that throughout the financial year we would continue to work to identify and classify land into that categorisation as more information becomes available. So it is hoped over time that whilst in the first rating period we might not have those complete, that throughout the financial year we'll make sure that we're capturing those land uses that are considered short-term accommodation and commercial in nature falling into that category. It probably is a holding pattern until we do a more in-depth review of the overall rating structure, in which the categorisation for potentially uses like short-term accommodation can be called out and classified more independently of other uses across the region. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson?
Just a comment, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I support this, like we've been through the process, and as much as it's hard to stomach for someone from the rural sector, but I'd support that going forward we need to have a good long hard look at some of these categories and review the process a bit earlier than budget time next year, propose maybe later on September or October of this year, and have a good long hard look at some of these to try and keep the equity amongst these almost 70 categories, because it's getting blown out of proportion in some of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments? Okay, the
Motion is to adopt.
okay, so the motion to adopt the differential general rates as per the schedule listed in the report, I put to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? We lost Councillor Bowman.
Councillor Bowman, were you for or against?
I think he's frozen. The whole
At least it's a nice photo.
Can we try and reconnect with Councillor Bowman?
Not during the meeting. We'll have to take the vote as 6-0,
Yes.
and that Councillor Bowman did vote at the time. We'll
Staying.
call him directly to find out.
So, yeah, the motion is carried 6-0.
Carried 6-0, yeah.
With Councillor.
Councillor Bowman are not able to vote, not able to be recorded.
That's the first one they go missing.
Too small, so I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear us? Councillor Bowman?
No,
It's an agreeable smile.
We are, Adam's just gone out to ring him now. Did we get on to him, Adam?
Can you dial back in or?
Yeah,
He's trying to, he's just had a compliance just froze up one of his restart.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. We'll give him a moment to rejoin.
Yeah, I'm a big screen there. Right, guys, we need to sweeten the wings. No, no.
Media there, I don't want to get me with a photo with a gummy bear in my mouth. So.
James, can you just go and get someone from IT to check the links are okay?
We've got Warren, so
There's
assuming
been some fallout of internet,
Phone coverage.
yes, down my end of the world, your end of the world. Most unreliable.
federal government not investing in utilities, huh?
I lost internet yesterday.
This is a position the it's not pronounced. We can continue with the councillor or
Yeah, can we put him on the phone? Find out exactly where he's at. Maybe put him on speaker on the phone.
Adam's.
Oh.
He's lost power as the message has come to me. So
Can't we improve this there? Can't we just put him on the phone on a phone?
I don't have an issue with that.
No. Anybody else? Can't we just put him on the
Do we
speaker phone?
specify how they can attend by the?
Whatever.
if you're doing it by phone, you need some assurance that he's in the room by himself, not up to ring.
Yes.
Issues not with the team issue
Right. It's a power supply issue at the moment, Mr. Mayor, so either proceed with the meeting or stop and wait till he's available. My suggestion is
Could be ours.
Could be ours.
Can't we just put him on the phone? But he's by himself, isn't he?
He's got no power.
He's trying to get on
Use the phone.
his phone.
We've got technology.
I think I think we need to keep moving. So we'll proceed without him at this stage. Do we need to record that he's left the meeting?
Do you need a motion that he's lost power and will rejoin the meeting when
Do we need to move
so
it?
moved?
We need to note it. We need to note that
just for
he's
noting.
absent from the meeting,
Yep. So
not
that's
due to any fault of his, establishing the connections to
connectivity issues.
and power issues.
Mr Mayor, my only issue with that is if Councillor Clay Bowman has got any, wants to discuss any of these matters, we don't know if he's voting for or against it at the moment. So we should give him the opportunity. I don't understand why we can't have him on the phone.
I think
He's trying to get on the phone. He's trying to use his phone.
it's okay. Sorry, councillor.
Should we just have a break? Take that, you can
We can adjourn for 5 minutes to allow him
All
time to
We'll
reconnect.
adjourn till 10 o'clock just to give him some time to sort it out. All in favour? Yeah.
Meeting adjourned 9:55.
Reconvene at 10 a.m. All those in favour? Carried. Okay, Councillor Bowman, we recorded you as unable to vote on the last matter, but the motion was carried. Okay, so item 2.6, general rates, setting of minimum general rates, moved Councillor Wright. I'll second that one. Director Jason, would you like to discuss?
I will, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, this This report sets the minimum general rates, it sets the rates in the dollar, and it identifies those properties for caps. Taylor, if you can just roll up the report. Councillors, as I said at the start, we've tightened the language in the resolution around the limitation of increases and the capping, and the red text that's on the screen represents a tighter classification of the capping requirements, and that's been advice received from the lawyers as late as Monday afternoon to tighten that up. It doesn't change the essence of the report, and the limitation of increase column in the table doesn't reflect zero, it reflects not applicable. So this is really setting the rates in the dollar and setting where the capping will apply for each of the properties across the local government area. Happy to take other questions.
Any comments? Councillor Clifford?
Through you, Mr Mayor, to Director Jason. When we relook at this in the next 12 months, can we narrow it down a bit? Because sort of to go from 110 to 300,000 is sort of like, so maybe put some more.
More levels?
Yes. Yeah.
Not just comment. Yes, we can, Councillor Clifford. The bandings come about really by what's been influenced in the changes in the revaluation. So property movements haven't moved consistently across the region, and so the banding's been set to try and capture the best representation of where the new values now sit. That they will be looked at each time we look at the general rates as well.
Thank you, Director.
Okay. The motion that Council resolved in accordance with Section 94 of the Local Government Act to set the minimum general rates per the report I put to the vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. On 2.7, delegation of power to the Chief Executive. Move Councillor Finlay, second Councillor Clifford. Would you like to speak to that one directly?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This is a mostly mechanical report, councillors. It provides an opportunity to delegate to the Chief Executive Officer any rulings required around the classifications and categorisations of properties for rating purposes. That is a consistent practice across local government, and that delegation just allows the CEO to be the arbiter where there is a distinct disagreement between what the property owner thinks the classification is and what the council staff and myself have identified as the rating category. It's just a mechanism to allow for that to be managed.
Any comments, councillors? The motion that Council resolved to adopt differential rating categories and to delegate to the Chief Executive Officer with no restriction. Further report I put to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Bowman, are you alive?
No.
Motion's carried 6-0. Councillor Bowman to vote. I'm happy for him to call in if everybody else is in favour.
to do that.
I think we need to keep moving this along.
We call him in.
There's technical Kosher, but put the phone just in front.
Yep.
So that he can hear the talking. Councillor Bowman, it's Jason. Can you hear me? I have you on speakerphone in the chamber. I'll leave the phone in front of myself and the Mayor as we talk so that you can hear the discussion. And I'm assuming you're trying to log back in as well?
Yes, I will be.
So you are live in the meeting?
Yes, I'll let you know if I can't hear what's going on.
Okay. Can you hear me all right, Councillor Bowman?
Yes, I can, Mr Mayor.
Yep. So that last item, 2.7, was which I think you fell out on there, was carried, and you recorded unable to vote. Okay, item 2.8, overall plan rural fire brigades. Move Councillor Clifford, second Councillor Collins. Mr. Bradshaw, would you like to speak to that one?
I'm going to have a rest, Mr Mayor, and I'll ask our Manager of Financial Services, Leah Bradley, to talk to that report.
Good morning, councillors. This report we have on the table for you at the moment is in relation to our Rural Fire Brigade's overall plan. It's a statutory requirement that we adopt the overall plan for each of our 5 current Rural Fire Brigades within our region. The overall plan essentially sets the what activities will be undertaken by those fire brigades, the who and the where are included within their designated areas, the cost of providing those services, and when the overall plan will be undertaken. So this particular report lists the 5 fire brigades, and the proposed cost of operating those services has varied slightly from last year, mainly due to changes in the number of properties within each of those designated areas. Happy to take any questions before we move on to the actual setting of the charges.
Any comments, questions, councillors? Okay, the motion to adopt the overall plan, rural fire brigades per the report, I put to the vote. Those in favour? Aye. Yep, the motion's, thank you, councillor. The motion's carried unanimously. I lost track of it there. Item 2.9, special charges, rural fire brigades. Move Councillor Collins, second Councillor Wright. Sure, I'll let you decide to speak or hand
Thank
off.
you, Mr Mayor. To follow on, I'll ask Leah to talk to this report as well. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you. Through the chair, again in relation to our 5 rural fire brigades, we have proposed to set the charges for the levies generated for Cannon Valley Rural Fire Brigade at $25 per assessment, same as last year. Conway Rural Fire Brigade at $20 per assessment, the same as last year. Gloucester Rural Fire Brigade at $15 per assessment, again no change. Herondale, $20 per assessment, no change. And Bowen Delta at $20 per assessment, no change. So the requests for the levies to be set come directly from the Rural Fire Brigades in correlation with QFES. So we've received their applications this year, and these are the charges that they are requesting council recoup on their behalf. We have been liaising with QFES in relation to Abbott Point Rural Fire Brigade, but at this point in time, they have not yet made the official application through QFES to enable them to levy or request council to levy charges on their behalf. So we'll continue working with them through this financial year. If that does change into the next financial year, we will be proposing that to council at that stage. Happy to take any questions.
Some questions? Okay. The motion that council adopt the special charges for rural fire brigades per the report, I put to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Bowman's back online. The motion's carried unanimously. Okay, item 2.10, utility charges waste. Move Councillor Clifford, second Councillor Wright. Dr. Bradshaw, I think this is you again.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Councillors, you have before you the charges that relate to waste services. We're continuing to review waste areas, and it's been mentioned at the start of the meeting that it's an area that there are additional revenue requirements for. What's happened for this financial year, there's been an opportunity and a need to rebalance some of the charges. So I just keep it in plain language, the red bin and the yellow bin costs have come down, and we've instituted a new refuse management facility charge that all will pay across the region, whether you are inside or outside of the declared service areas for those collection services, or you are a non-residential property, the charge will apply. That separate, well, the charge that's been identified is really about managing the waste into the landfills and the sites that we have right across the region, and making sure that we can manage our compliance and regulatory obligations both now but also into the future, and also respecting that we have some historic landfills where work is required, and that needs to be funded essentially from revenue to ensure that the environmental compliance is carried out overall. The charges have been remixed and there is an increase in there for this financial year. Council have had that workshop with them in terms of what those changes are. Happy to take any other questions Council might have, otherwise the resolution stands.
Comments or questions, councillors? Okay, the motion to adopt the utility charges waste per the report, I put to the vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Okay, item 211, utility charges water. I'll move. Councillor Wright, second. Director, would you like to talk to this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, in relation to water charges, there's been some discussion already today regarding the utility charges for water. What's been proposed in the resolution that has been put before you is an increase of 8% in both the access charges and the consumption charges. That reflects Council's commitment to full cost pricing and a price path to ensure ongoing sustainability into the future. It's been discussed already, Mr. Mayor. I'm probably happy to sit and take questions, Council.
Any further question or comment? Councillor Finlay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I won't go through my spiel as I had in that previous one again. The councillors know where I'm coming from with this. But again, I reiterate the cost of this to the living of our residents that own properties, but also those that are renting as well. The rents are so high in this place, and then not just in our region, but across the zip, and a lot of those tenants have to pay for the excess water as well. So that just compounds the cost of living for everybody. And again, I just cannot support this. I asked a question in relation to before about I wanted to propose that we use some of the retained surplus. My question is, when are we going to use these retained surpluses that's in this budget from last year? Can I ask that question, Mr. Mayor?
I think it's a very general question. Did you want to address that in any way, Director?
And why can't we use it to balance the budget as I proposed?
The first response to the question is Council does have retained surpluses there. That money can be drawn on during the year to fund additional operational expenditure as needed, or additional capital expenditure if the Council so chooses. That fund has been built up over recent years, so there is a balance of funds in there that can be used to offset additional works as they come on board. It's already been forecast to Council that some of that retained surplus may be used to fund network planning and other future long-term planning work associated with trying to manage what the growth impacts will be more broadly across the region. The annual financial statements will bring forward a final position for the financial year, and then that will be presented to Council likely in August for the adoption of the annual financial statements. The current requirements under the financial management guidelines and supported by audit reflect that each budget should start from a zero position and fund itself throughout the financial year and stand alone from any other financial results. Historically, local governments may have been able to use carried forward surpluses to balance budgets, but in the current environment and under the current guidance that we work to, we don't draw forward any balanced position, either positive or negative. We started a zero position and we continue to try to generate sustainable budgets into the future that are either at a break-even or surplus position. Council can choose to make a deficit budget, but there would be circumstances and reasons for them wanting to do that. I would suggest this is a matter that gets discussed after the adoption of the annual financial statements and in the preparation of the 25-26 budget works, but also through the budget reviews that will occur throughout the 24-25 financial year. Thank you.
Any further comments? Councillor Bowman, are you still with us?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. I just had a look through the event log, and the power usage of Microsoft Teams was shutting down the PowerShell of the computer. So I think by turning off my camera, I've got that power usage back down to hopefully be manageable. But I'm staying on the phone with Jason, so if I drop out, I'll still be in contact.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, the motion that Council resolved to adopt the utility charges water as per the report, I put to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor, could you verbally indicate?
Aye.
The motion, those opposed?
Against.
The motion is carried 6-1. Item 2.12, utility charges sewage. Move Councillor Clifford, second Councillor Wright. Speak to this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, if you have before you the utility charges in relation to the provision of sewerage across those areas where sewer is provided throughout the local government area. There are multiple schemes and they are defined in the maps that are attached to that resolution, as would have been consistent with the water and the waste areas. The sewer charges this year have been increased by 3%. It is a business that is much closer to achieving its full cost pricing outcomes and is operating in a sustainable position at this point in time. It's considered that those increases are necessary to make sure that we're maintaining the operations of current networks and infrastructure at an operational level. Happy to take any other questions.
Any comments or questions on this one? Councillor Bowman, any queries?
No, I can't say I'm happy about price increases, but I know we have to do them.
Okay, the motion that Council resolved to adopt the utility charges sewage in accordance with the report, I put to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Bowman?
A yes from me, yes.
The motion is carried unanimously. Item 2.13, administration of rates and charges. I move second Councillor Wright. Director Bradshaw, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, as forecast, and if Talia, you can just go to the bottom section of the resolution, there's one sentence at the bottom that has been reworded in relation to capping, and that's really about where there are changes in how the land is used. The capping does not apply, just to make that crystal clear. The sentence that was there was perhaps a little bit messy, so it's been tidied up. So other than that, this report presents the policies that allow us to administer. So it's about supplementary charges, the interest on overdue rates policy, our recovery policies for both rates and charges and general debtors, and the prompt payment discount where special circumstances might apply. These policies allow the staff to work on a day-to-day basis to make decisions when matters arise in relation to properties and the payment of rates. They are about the day-to-day activities of managing the rate throughout council. Happy to take any questions on that, Mr. Chair.
Comments or questions, councillors? Okay. The motion of council resolved. It's administration of rates and charges per the report. I put to the vote. Those in favour?
Yes from me.
The motion is carried unanimously. Item 2.14, concessions to rates and charges. Move Councillor Clifford, second Councillor Collins. I'll give it to you again. Thanks, Director. Rachel.
Councillors, this part of the meeting addresses the concessions that are offered in relation to rates and charges. It talks predominantly about where pensioner concessions will be applied to properties and the value that is accumulated in terms of that overall pensioner concession across the region. It also identifies opportunities in relation to our ability to offer concessions more broadly, and it sets the policy framework around that. So there are a number of policies attached there that identify the concessions. Where there are genuine hardship concessions and individual cases bring up matters that aren't covered by policy, the opportunity exists for us to bring back for a particular resolution of council in that regard. And one of those can often be in relation to the deferral by the offer of land. So if someone chooses for us to take over the land in part or in full payment, then that would come back to council and require a separate resolution. The policy just provides some guidance in relation to that. Happy to take any questions.
Any comments or questions, councillors? Okay, the motion that council resolved to adopt the concessions to rates and charges as per the report, I put to the vote. Those in favour?
In favour.
The motion is carried unanimously. Item 2.15, investment policy. Move Councillor Collins, second Councillor Clifford. Director, I'll hand over to you.
To give myself a rest, I'll ask Manager Financial Services Leah to talk to this investment policy. It's a requirement under the legislation, and Leah will talk about the changes.
Morning, councillors. Thank you, Jason. So this policy essentially sets our ability to invest council surplus cash funds in a manner that is appropriate, where we manage risk and we ensure that our ratepayers' money is maintained effectively and in a safe location. So we are very heavily legislated in where we can invest public money, which is why this policy is in place as well, to ensure that that is maintained effectively, whilst also maximising our return on investment where possible. I know we've spoken with councillors in the past about term deposits that we have in place, and we have budgeted $6.4 million worth of interest revenue into the coming financial year as well, as a result of the effectiveness of this policy that's proposed today. Happy to take any further questions, but essentially we do maintain our funds where possible through our local branches to make sure that we do our best to try and keep them open where we have influence, whilst also ensuring good return on investments to be able to minimise rate increases into the future.
Any comments or questions, councillors? Okay, the motion to adopt the investment policy as in the report, I put to the vote. Those in favour?
In favour.
The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 2.16, debt and borrowing policy. Move Councillor Wright, second Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, required under legislation is for us to have a policy about debt and borrowings. This policy articulates council's position. It identifies the repayments for the coming financial year and where there may be forecast external loans required into the future. It identifies no loans for this financial year and that the debt reduces to about $63 million at the end of this financial year. Happy to take any further questions on that, Mr. Mayor. It's quite a mechanical policy as such.
Any comments or questions, councillors? Councillor Finlay?
Just through the Mayor to Jason, it's good to see in the appropriation statement and the capital funding statement where the debt redemption is shown going down, where it's been coming from. Thank you for that report.
Councillor? Okay, the motion to adopt the debt borrowing policy as per the report, I put to the vote. Those in favour?
I agree.
Would you have a hand up there, Councillor Finlay? Did you have one up? Yeah.
I spoke with the motion.
No, that's all right, I'm just checking. Motion's carried unanimously. Okay, item 2.17, procurement policy 2024-25. Councillor Clifford, I'll second that one. Director Bradshaw, would you like to say?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The procurement policy 24-25 is a key document for council as an organisation in terms of its ability to continue to support local business and industry and ensure as much as possible, the money that's raised here is spent locally in the goods, services and projects that we deliver. There have been some changes to the policy this year around the thresholds that will provide some greater flexibility for staff. So it's about trying to seek some efficiencies. It also identifies that where possible we will work with other aspects of our local government that require perhaps additional flexibility and adaptability around ensuring that we have good panels of suppliers or standing offer arrangements, preferred supplier arrangements or sole supplier arrangements where those panels provide a bit more security and also efficiency in our ability to manage and maintain the local spend. So other than that, the policy doesn't make any significant changes from previously. It's underpinned by the sound contracting principles in the local government legislation, and again, we continue to, where possible, support and endeavour to advance local business. Thanks, Mr.
Any comments or questions, councillors? Okay, the motion that council adopt the procurement policy for 2024-25 financial year, I put to the vote. Those in favour?
I agree.
Motion's carried unanimously. Okay, item 2.18, schedule of fees and charges 24-25 waste. Move Councillor Wright, second Councillor Collins. Director.
Mr. Mayor, I'll ask Manager Financial Services Leah Bradley just to talk to this report following last month's reports to Council.
Thank you. Me again. So this report is in relation to our waste fees and charges for 24-25. So Council endorsed on the 29th of May the fees and charges as they stood with no change, knowing that we're still in debate in relation to our full cost price model before we could set the schedule of fees and charges for waste based on Council deliberations. So this morning we have in front of you for adoption our waste fees and charges for next financial year. As I mentioned, we have gone through a full cost pricing review to ensure that these charges that are being proposed are full cost recovery, so that we're essentially charging the cost of being able to manage and deal with that particular stream of waste. I guess one of the things to note is Council also responsible for paying a waste levy on certain streams of waste that's collected into our 24-25 financial year. Our general waste moves up to $94 per tonne, which you will see reflected across all of the charges where it's applicable. In particular, with our disposal of mattresses, there is proposed no change to the base rate of disposal of mattresses so that we can minimise illegal dumping across our region. But you will notice an increase in the fee due to the waste levy that's been applied, moving to the $94 a tonne is reflected in that charge. So in order to maintain that full cost price model, we have increased by roughly about 10.4% to meet cost recovery across those charges with our commercial, industrial and all of those other waste streams. Happy to take any questions that councillors might have, but this sets us in a good position to make sure that we're charging the actual cost of dealing with these waste streams.
Any comments or questions, councillors?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Bowman.
I'm trying to save everything on my computer at the moment, keep the power down, but I think within this one, I'd just like some clarification on vacant blocks of land within the urban area. I know we had the specific fee last year, which is falling under the waste management facility fee I expect this year, but I'd just like some clarification on what vacant properties will be charged.
Just Councillor Bowman, I think we're on these schedules of fees and charges. Waste are you referencing the correct report?
Is this one with the management facility charges and the wheelie bins?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Councillor Bowman, we're on to report 2.18, the schedule of fees and charges. I think the question that you had related to the setting of the waste charges back at about 2.10. All
Yeah,
vacant land will be picked up and levied appropriately. So whether it's inside or outside the declared service area, or it's a non-residential property, that will be applied to vacant land as well as occupied land, if that answers your question.
Thank you, it does.
Any further questions or comments, councillors? The motion that council adopt the schedule and fees and charges 24-25 for waste as per the report, I put to the vote. Those in favour?
I agree.
The motion is carried unanimously. Okay, item 219, application of code of competitive conduct for business activities. Moved Councillor Clifford, and second Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In relation to the report on business activities, I will pass to Manager Financial Services Leah to talk to both this and the next report. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you. This particular report that we're looking at the moment presents to council whether or not we apply the Code of Competitive Conduct to our business activities. It is a statutory requirement to assess all of business activities operated by council, determine whether or not they meet the legislative requirements and thresholds for being classified as either a prescribed or a significant business activity. So this financial year, we began assessed all of our business activities. There is no proposed change on the prior year. With our water and sewerage business, the threshold relates to the number of water meter services provided. With all of our other business activities, our threshold set at $9.7 million under the regulations to be classified as a significant business activity, of which we have our waste management facility or service that meets that criteria. And then from a prescribed business activity perspective, $340,000 worth of expenditure is the threshold. So there are, as I mentioned, no proposed changes on the prior year. We haven't had anything else fall within that threshold or move between thresholds at this point in time. So this particular report then looks to apply the legislative requirements based on those two differentiating categories, essentially. So what we are proposing is to apply our Code of Competitive Conduct, which is a requirement under the Act, to Whitsunday Coast Airport, Boxdale Quarry, Shute Harbour Marine Terminal, and our holiday parks. We are proposing to not apply the Code of Competitive Conduct to our road maintenance activity, as it doesn't meet the requirements under the regulations to need to apply the Code of Competitive Conduct. We're not in competition with anybody else within our region. And also, again, last year we recognised our Proserpine Entertainment Centre as a prescribed business activity since it had been operating 12 months at that stage. So again, it is being recognised as prescribed. However, this year, same as last year, we are recommending to not apply the Code of Competitive Conduct as that particular business activity provides a social service, which essentially means that we will not apply full cost pricing to the charges at that facility, which would potentially make the facility not usable by our community if we were to do that. So it is recommended to not apply the Code of Competitive Conduct so that we can keep the charges as low as possible to get utilisation of that facility. Happy to take any questions.
Questions or comments, councillors? The motion to adopt the application of the Competitive Code of Conduct to business activities identified in the report. I put to the vote. Those in favour?
I agree.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Just before we get to the next item,
Yep.
Can I ask that the council, because I will not be voting for the plan for this on their water, sewage and waste. And specifically, I won't be voting for the water. So I'm happy to vote for the sewage, the waste, and all those other ones. So I'm just asking through the council if we could have a separate resolution just for water, and then a separate resolution for the rest of them. I'm happy to support the rest, but obviously I can't support the water.
Can you talk to the mechanics around that?
Please.
Yeah, I can. I think Councillor Finlay signals his intent to support some of the activities, but not all of them. And we can separate it into separate resolutions. Do the first item as one resolution, and then do the second item as a second resolution. If council's happy to go with it that way, and that will provide some separation essentially between what are our what are our significant business activities as distinct from our prescribed business activities. So with a little bit of mechanics we can make that adjustment into two resolutions if the council supports.
Just a bit of clarification on that, and thank you for the directive on allowing that to happen. What I was a little just wondered why the annual performance plan started with some water. When I first started reading, I thought that's good, Whitsunday water, and then there'll be a Whitsunday sewage and Whitsunday waste. But when you read it, water, waste and sewage is all combined in that report, whereas all the other ones are all separate. Can we have this just for water separate to sewage and waste? And then I'm happy to vote for the sewage and waste one as well.
Understanding it's the one business unit.
It is considered one at the moment.
The answer's that simple, councillor. At the moment, it's considered one business unit. We're actually in the process of adjusting that because we've got a new manager, waste and recycling, on board. There'll be a direct report to myself. The way in which they're structured, though, the administrative support and the financial management resource sits within that business. For the purposes of today, it is a combined report. It's not an easy thing to extract. We'd have to actually go and rewrite the performance report. I'm a bit hamstrung today in relation to pulling it apart, but it is something we'll have to look at going forward with changes to the reporting lines. Water, wastewater Mr Mayor, water, wastewater will most likely stay as a single report because of how they're intertwined, and it's effectively how they run their business. Thank you.
It's just a little bit misleading, but it's under water. We've got waste in there, and I don't see the connection between waste and title. I know it's only been pathetic, but maybe we need to change the name of the name of the report.
So for the purpose of this, I'm happy to separate that as a separate resolution, but you'd be voting against the entire performance plan for water, sewage, waste, as how I'm reading it. So.
I haven't voted, but I'm actually for the sewage and waste, please.
At the time at which the vote is taken, if you'd like to raise that point, then we can make a note in the record of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Is there any further comments or questions with regards to the performance plans? Oh, that's all right. We haven't we're getting distracted.
It's the water one first.
Okay. With regards to the performance plans, business activities for water, waste and sewage, move Councillor Clifford, second Councillor Simpson. Any further questions?
Did you want us to talk to
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That was a bit of an Indian gift. Claire, can I get you to talk to the detail of that report?
No problem. So further to the previous report, this report addresses the legislative requirement. So when we determine significant and prescribed business activities, as we did in the previous resolution, we are required to adopt every year an annual performance plan with a range of key requirements under the regulations that need to be met, particularly around the objectives of those business activities, any targets that are set, whether they be financial or non-financial, as well as any major investment activities and quite a number of other activities addressed. So the teams have done considerable work in this space, refining what we put forward. Water, sewerage and waste will be undertaking that work in the next financial year as well, since a lot of that information is collated for multiple purposes within that business activity. So the annual performance plans that are attached and tabled for Council's adoption, there are no surprises in these particular reports. The only comment I will make is within the Chute Harbour Marine Terminal. We do need to make an adjustment to a table in there in relation to historical volumes of passengers, and the total column being a Word document doesn't do all the cool things that Excel does with calculating sums. So we'll need to amend one of the figures in that prior to it going up onto Council's website. Happy to take any questions that anyone might have on these business activities or what's in the performance plans.
Mr. Mayor, we'll just make it clear, the only reason why I'm voting no for this, because on page 282, it actually includes the budget, the rest of the part of the plan, happy with. Only because the financials are in here, that's the part obviously I'm not happy with.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. So for the first one, which is resolving the motion to adopt the performance plan for Whitsunday water, sewage and waste, I put to the vote. Those in favour?
I agree.
Those against? Yeah.
And through Mr. Mayor, can it be noted that I'm actually agreeing to the water, the waste of the sewage?
Yeah, we'll make a note in the bottom information that you support the sewer and waste businesses, but voting against the water on the basis of increased revenue.
Yes, please, thank you very much.
Carried 6-1, noted Councillor Finlay. Okay, so for the balance of them, with regards to the performance plan, move Councillor Finlay, second Councillor Collins. Any further comment, Manager Leah? Happy to run as is? Yep. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Finlay.
Mr. Mayor, just commend the staff to the commercial operations that we've got within the council and the return that's going to be coming out of them back into the general fund. Obviously, there's other commercial opportunities there that we're going to be exploring this financial year as well, and we're putting an end into fruition as soon as we can. It will help fund that the shortfall that we in our general fund budget. So, just commend the staff in the operations of our commercial activities.
Councillor. Okay, the motion that Council adopt the performance plans for the Whitsunday Coast Airport, Foxdale Quarry, Chute Harbour Marine Terminal, Whitsunday Holiday Park and Proserpine Entertainment Centre performance plans I put to the vote. Those in favour?
I agree.
The motion is carried unanimously. Okay, lucky last item, 2.21 budget 2024-25. I'll move that one, and second, Councillor Wright.
I will start,
Yep,
and then
sure.
I'll ask Manager Strategic Finance to help. Councils, this is the adoption of the budget, the financial statements and all the numbers that represent the decisions previously made in the past resolutions regarding rates and charges and revenue. We have a requirement under the legislation to publish financial statements in accordance with the accounting standards, but also the requirements of the local government legislation, and essentially statements 1 to 4 represent what we're required to do, as well as the sustainability measures. I might ask Manager Strategic Finance Julie Moller to just present an overview of those reports, noting that this will be Julie's last budget with Council. I'd like her to have the opportunity to present that information to Council. Thank you, John.
If he's not aware. Sorry, through the chair. Thank you. And yes, this is my last budget with Council, which is sad, but I've got another adventure to go to and assist another council, so it's quite challenging. So probably to go back, so I'll go through the probably 2+ years. So the income statement first, and probably going on to what Councillor Finlay had said about our operating surpluses going out years 2 and 3. Because council don't have the ability to do an appropriation statement like they did years ago, those surpluses are actually funds that are for the remediation funds that we need to put away for our landfills. So we are conscious of that. We can't do it above the line, we've got to do it below the line. So that's what those surpluses are for those ones. So this year, small surplus of 40,000, and next year we've got 1.7 million. And then obviously our financial position, how we're going with our financial position. Cash, we are using cash over the 10 years, so it does go down as we're getting into our capital program. There are big capital programs moving out as well, so we are using some of our reserves. And there is proposed loan borrowings in outer years as well, which Leah has alluded to. change, the financial ratios are one of the ones that we needed to put in as well. So have a look at page 351. You'll see some of our financial ratios there that we're required underneath the new sustainability standards to apply them. Okay. It was a bit difficult to do the 5-year average in our 10-year, but we have done them. We possibly were supposed to go and get the prior year figures and put them in as the current year average, but we're discussing with audit around when we have to actually recognise the prior year and when those 5-year averages have to commence from. And then obviously there's the capital program there, which gives you every capital project that is proposed to be constructed over the next 3 years. And I would hope council deliver them all this year and next year, as it is quite a large program for council. Any questions?
Certainly do, Julie. And I commend you on your efforts in filing the financial reports together, as you always do. I also say now to you, but say thank you so much.
That's fine.
We've known you for a long time. Your professionalism in putting all these things together. Also from the internal audit committee point of view as well. Preempting the reports I'm going to ask for, they already get put on the table, Mr. Mayor, before I even ask for them. So, and that's when two accountants have got the same brain. So it works very good. A couple of points I just want to point out to councillors, and I had to discuss this with the Matthew, who is our contract auditor.
He's our QAO contract
yeah.
auditor.
Just in relation to our bank balances and the cash flow statement, Mr. Mayor. So on page 347, the projected estimated bank account balance, including cash investments for the end of 24, is 112 million, sorry. And then next column, it's going to be down to around about 91 million. One of the reasons for that, as you see in the capital funding statement, is we've shifted money out of the reserves to pay for a lot of our capital projects and things like that. Also, just want to point out that in the cash flow statement, that money that we invest is not shown in the cash flow statement. It was a question I asked to our auditor, how that should be shown. He explained and said no, he's happy for it to be not in there, but in reality, when you read the cash flow statement, the balance on there says $70-odd million, but in reality we've got $90 million there in the cash there. And taking Julie's comments about retained surplus, yes, that's what we needed to do with some of that, to put into cover our provisions for the waste in the future. So yeah, so it is good. This report's so comprehensive, it's so good. The capital funding statement and the appropriation statement is exactly how we used to do things back in the dinosaur days a bit, but I tell you it worked, and it's so good and so easy to explain. So I just want to commend the staff on the presentation of these reports. Unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, because this contains the increase in the water charges, unfortunately I can't vote for that side of things. So if it can be noted again, that the reason why I'm voting against this is the increase in the water charges, that would be certainly appreciated.
I might just close out, Mr. Mayor. So, resolution in front of you, councillors, is about receiving the estimated statement of position for the 30th of June 2024. It's then about adopting the financial statements for the current budget plus 2 years, and also the long-term financial forecast for the 10-year period. That's the requirement of the legislation, and to accept the sustainability measures that have been reported both in the 3-year and the 10-year budget document. So it's essentially closing out and adopting the budget in total.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors?
I'd like to, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as I touched on before, legislation requires us to do a forecast of the net increase in rates and charges. Last year we put that at 5.4%. This year it's come through at 7.4%, which works out to about $2 million. I'd just like the director to clarify, as all the councillors know, the work that we put the team through, that the costs that have flowed through to council are actually above that $2 million, and the council is absorbing costs into itself, looking for improvements rather than passing all the costs on to the public.
I think I'll try and answer that. What is presented is the net impact there, councillor, and I think part of your point being that significant numbers of measures have been taken in the construction of the budget to reduce expenditure and find efficiencies where we can, so the impact on revenue increases has been minimised, and that is reflected in the numbers that are presented there. The position developed through the management of council and in conduct of the sessions with council also represents that significant adjustments have been made to the operational expenditure of the organisation, and what we are reporting there is the increased movement in the overall yield. So that's the increase in the amount of rates and charges, and also total revenue for council. It's being reflected in there in that increased number from $101 to $108 million in round terms. I'm hoping that answers your question, Councillor Bowman.
Through the chair, I just wanted to add a little bit of additional information. When that ratio has to be applied, so at 7.4%, it's on your original budget that you had last year. So we've had budget reviews throughout the year, and we've had growth where we've had new subdivisions come online. Our actual percentage increase that we're proposing this year is on our revised budget, not our original. But unfortunately, I can't do that when I'm preparing statements. I've got to do it on the original. So it is tentatively higher than what it is in reality, but that's the reason why.
Thank you, and thanks to all the team. I know how hard you worked on this in a very short time.
Council. Anything further, councillors, before we close it off? Okay, the motion to receive the statement of estimated financial position for 23-24 and adopt the budget for 24-25 as per the report. I'll put to the vote. Those in favour?
I agree.
Those against?
For the reasons stated, Mr. Mayor, and I would appreciate the comments just in relation to only the water, please.
So the motion is carried 6-1. The comments noted. That was our last item for the special meeting. I'll declare the meeting finished at 10:54 a.m. Thanks for your attendance.